Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here. I'm the host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business leaders and real estate experts. I always love to highlight a couple of other episodes that we've done on the Same Day Podcast. We recently had Scott Reeves of Chickasaw Community Bank on the podcast talking about the lending process and what can make things easier if you're looking to borrow money for real estate. We had Mike Bosch on the podcast. He's the founder of Atento Capital. I should say it right, Atento Capital. And we're talking about the state of venture investments community in Tulsa, especially among the underserved community. And generally speaking, you know, the middle of the country is underserved when it comes to venture-backed companies, largely forgotten by those big players. So check out those other podcasts that we've had on recently. Today's episode is brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. Keyrenter Property Management, we're a full-service property management company helping our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. We help our clients build wealth while taking the headache out of property management. Listen, Lee, you probably know this, but we've done hundreds of renovation projects. One that's particularly fun was a recent one that we did in Sapulpa, which is a suburb of Tulsa. For those that are not familiar, I walked into the project and it was awful. It was like the worst I'd ever seen. Low ceilings, dark and dingy, terrible layout. I told the owner not to buy it, but I was super wrong. Seth Rice on our team is our general contractor, turned that place around. It was dingy and terrible, but we turned it into a beautiful rental. Can lights, reconfigured it, redid the kitchen, the whole deal. It was beautiful and got top rent. So, it was a great success story. But that's why no matter what your property needs are, what rentals you have from 1 to 100, we're the management solution for you that you need to go to KeyrenterTulsa.com, KeyrenterOklahomaCity.com, or KeyrenterArkansas.com, or you can email us at info@KeyrenterPMC.com. So originally, Lee, you and I met through Ben Vondrelli, I guess, who owns The Root downtown. Yes. It's a co-working space. He introduced us. We were both members there, and we hung out, and then we ended up working together on some tech stuff that you built for our business with Robert Davis on our team. That was super helpful. We also know each other through EO, Entrepreneur Organization. That's a group that we're both members of. Their stated purpose is to help entrepreneurs achieve their full potential. And their ambition is to enable transformational growth in the lives of EO members. It's an awesome organization, great membership here in Tulsa. We're also friends. We've had a huge number of friends in common, both in EO and out of EO. Brian Elliott, who runs the show over at Sharp Development. Taylor Brown, who's the co-owner of You Need a Budget, the SaaS software platform, as you might guess, is for budgeting and life expenses and other things. Blaine Hoyt, who you introduced my wife to, they work together on the Find. Your wife, Jordan, is a total badass. She's the owner of Joe & Co. Salon here in town. She was booked, but you helped get me a slot in her schedule, and I appreciate that. She's got a ton of other gals over there in her hair salon, and she's moving to a new location on Cherry Street, which is also awesome, and I'm really excited for it. So if anybody's looking for a haircut and needs some recommendation on where to go to Joe & Co. Salon. Her team has enough people to have you covered. Anybody else that we know in common?
Man, I feel like you've hit a lot of them. I'm sure we could go down a list, man. There's a lot. Every single time I talk to you, there's somebody new. We're like, oh yeah, I know Matt. You know Matt.
There's also one guy I've been meaning to reach out to. I'd love to have on the podcast. John Simcox is the director of innovation over at First Fidelity Bank in OKC. We'd love to have John on to discuss some of the things that he's working on in innovation. We had Scott Reeves on recently, and that was a very interesting conversation, but we'd love to do more business with First Fidelity Bank in OKC. So I'd love to have him on at some point. He'd be a super interesting conversation, interesting guy.
He'd be a great asset. He knows a lot about the industry, and they're doing some really interesting things at First Fidelity Bank. We don't see much about them because they're in Oklahoma City. But I think we will learn to know their name more and more as they start building out new products.
Awesome. We'd love to have him on. Anyhow, Lee Easton of AeroVision, a business that automates services. AeroVision is a software development firm specializing in data and analytics. Lee himself graduated from OSU, recently married this amazing woman and an entrepreneur herself, Jordan. She's got you guys together have a furball dog running around the house. you're an adventure addict, Lee. I want to get into that. Your latest obsession is mountain biking down 14ers in Colorado. Tell us a little more about that. That sounds exciting.
Yeah. So for context, my background right now, I'm sitting in a Ford dealership, just trying to get some brake pads swapped out for my truck because I leave Monday for another. I do a 3 to 4 week trip every 2 to 3 months, and I head to Colorado. And I've been kind of on this endless journey to just push my physical health.
Yep.
And I've tried almost everything, and I found the one thing I think next to surfing is maybe mountain biking that really very low impact on the joints and the muscles, but also probably the hardest and most challenging, just I guess, technical sport out there. Heavy cardio. I haven't done anything quite like mountain biking that requires much cardio strength, and especially when you're anywhere from 10,000 feet to maybe even up to 14,000 feet altitude.
You can't breathe.
The oxygen, is very thin up there. So about a year and a half ago, I did my first, what I would call like a downhill adventure. And I hit 4 or 5 mountains in Colorado, and then worked my way out into Utah and did, the Moab area and Park City area. That was probably a 3-week long trip. Same scenario, took the truck. My truck's all rigged out for camping, so I spent a bunch of time at the top of the mountains. And at that point in time, I started finding other mountain bikers that were way better than I was. And just like, it was fun to ride with these guys because I thought I had good lungs. Right. And then, these guys would just outpace me, and I would be like hacking up, and like couldn't breathe. And these guys were just like, come on, man, we're only in like 10 miles. So I made a personal goal. I've shared this with my EO forum, shared this with some of my friends, but one of my personal goals for this year was to complete what's called an IMBA epic. So there's that. So IMBA is the International Mountain Biking Association. So it's this collection of mountain bikers, but the epic is a rating that they give like the top trails in the world. And so I think Colorado itself only has like 2 or 3 epics. I think the US maybe only has 15.
Wow.
Usually they're collectively rated. So it's a bunch of different people putting in their data on these trails. And I found this IMBA epic in Colorado. It's the Continental Divide. It's 36 miles of 10 to 12,000 feet altitude. Wow. And I've got a date set for June 25th.
Wow. So it's a great combination of cardio. You're doing exercise, but it doesn't feel like exercise because you're having an adrenaline fueled adventure in essence.
That's the best kind of exercise.
I'll tell you what's funny is, when you say you were up there and you thought you were doing pretty well, and then you met these other guys. I've been doing jiu-jitsu lately. And there's like a whole spiritual element of jiu-jitsu. It's like this, there's water metaphors of letting your opponent kind of flow over you. There's also this, there's just all sorts of these spiritual metaphors in this, world of self-defense and martial arts. And one of my friends was telling me, Stephen Shannon, who also runs a property management company down in Houston, a great childhood friend of mine, was telling me that one of the great things about jiu-jitsu, one of the great things it teaches you is that you don't know what you don't know or how bad you are, like other things in life, until you really start training and getting with people that are just so much better than you. And so it's a good lesson for life. It's like, you may think that you know things, you may think that you're good at something, but as you get better and better, you're always aware of how much more there is to gain in whatever you're doing, right? Property management and jiu-jitsu and bike riding and in anything, your business too, and AeroVision. So it's funny you mentioned that. Just it jogged my memory of a conversation that we'd recently had. Cool. So AeroVision, you guys, there's an aero component of AeroVision, which is interesting. You guys started out using drones for aerial data collection. Tell us about the origin story of that business.
Yeah. And I probably should change the name. I just never have, but
it's branded now.
It's branded. So, AeroVision started as a side hustle. I was working at ConocoPhillips after graduating OSU. It was a good cush job out of college. I will say, I was sold on this idea by Conoco that they were kicking off this drone program, and I had a passion for drone technology. While I was at OSU, I'd started a company called AeroVision, which might sound similar, but there was a business plan competition called Gov Cup, and myself and 2 other engineers, we started this concept called AeroVision. We were going to build out these surveying drones, and we'd even flown out to California. We met with Bolt House Farms. We were like, there was traction there. Like I think we actually had
Bolt House Farms, a big drone manufacturer or something.
Bolt House Farms is one of the largest carrot producers.
Oh, it's
in
a
the
farm.
US.
Okay.
I thought it was like a weird
name for a drone manufacturer. Maybe a spin out. Okay. All right.
So my goal there was, if I could get one of the largest farms in the US to agree to using drones, like those guaranteed contracts. So what happened was,
does Bolt House Farms do the juices that you see at like Whole Foods and stuff? Okay. Got it. I got it with you. Carrot juice. Yeah. Carrot juice. Yeah.
I flew out there. I'm in college. I rent a car, I don't have any money. I'm like spending all my money to like drive up to this farm. And I'm expecting this like massive organization, because Bolt House is massive. You would think it's just this huge headquarters. And like I met with the president of the company and a couple of people on the strategy side of the business, and we're in a trailer. Like we're in a trailer house, and like that's how they run.
Keeping it lean.
It's super lean.
But I love that. What an entrepreneurial story. You have no money. You're like, I've got this opportunity. I've got to make it happen. I'm going to take my last couple of pennies, scratch them together, and get a rental car so I can drive up to this farm. Well, you're expecting to be like the Apple headquarters in California. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So you drove out there and you were trying to do something to them. What happened?
So it boiled down to a lesson around partnership. When we were doing this was 2013, and regulations had not been set by the FAA. So it was very unclear of like how you could really commercially operate drones. So I saw this opportunity with ConocoPhillips. Thought, you know what, I'll take that full-time job. I can go at least maybe operate drones with them.
Yeah.
My 2 business partners at that time, they did not want to risk anything. I was all for it. I was thinking, you know what, let's get this contract with Bolt House. Let's just say, screw it. If we get fined by the FAA, we'll figure it out. We'll pay the fine. They don't even know what they're fining people. And one of them he was just really cautious. He didn't want to do it. So we pivoted that business into a Amazon dropship company. But it stayed as AeroVision. And so I asked them, I said, you guys, now that we're not doing the drone stuff anymore, can I take that concept and do my own thing? And they're like, cool. And that's how AeroVision really was born.
But wait, what was the Amazon dropship business? You were going to drone dropship stuff and be a third-party provider?
No, it had nothing to do with drones. We all read the 4-Hour Work Week, and we figured out.
Love that.
So we're all electrical engineers. We were manufacturing Edison light bulbs in China, and we were drop shipping them. We did pretty well. I think that business would have made more money than we were going to make with the Bolt House contract with the drone stuff.
Wow.
Just drop shipped, and then eventually one of the partners bought the other 2 of us out.
Did you have to? Okay, and in that business, and then is he still running that business?
I think so.
And so you were able to? Did you actually buy out the name? I guess Aero, like any trademark stuff, or no? You just took it. You were like, hey, can I have this? And they were like, sure, run with it.
I'm gonna go do the drone thing that we are agreeing not to do, right? And they're like, yeah, we're not doing drone stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna call it AeroVision. And they're like, that's fine. So
like that sounds oddly similar to AeroVision, but okay, I'm okay with it. All right. What year was that?
So that was 2014, going into 2015 was the official stamp date. AeroVision was registered as a business. And I was still at ConocoPhillips this time, it grew well as a side hustle. It was never, it never exploded, and it's probably never going to explode because it was a side hustle. But I had gotten some contracts with a couple power line companies and with GRDA, using drones. I bought 2 pretty high end drones to have on my fleet, And at that time, the FAA was starting to publish things. And so I was getting my certifications needed. And it's like the written test of a private pilot's license without any of the flight hours, right? So it's somewhat the same written test.
You need to be able to read a sectional map. You need to be able, you have to understand airspace, et cetera.
Yep. And so it's fairly straightforward. And my dad was a pilot. So I started, talking to my dad about it. He was willing to fly for me. And so I was able to kind of scale the business a little bit. And leverage my dad's license and fly with him. And by 2018,
so a person with a private pilot's license can fly a drone, or do they need apply for separate?
You still have to apply for your Part 107, but you don't have to do I mean, you already know everything you need to know. So you just go and take the test and get your Part 107. You're
Got
good.
it.
Yeah. And this may have all changed since then. This is 4 or 5 years ago, but at the time, that's what it was.
It was the Wild West. The FAA was just getting started. Now these drones are everywhere. Everyone's got one. They're popping off here and there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So AeroVision, it's stuck true to its name for about 4 years, operating as a just drone service provider. We got connected through 36 Degrees North. I met an architect who who had just left a firm, wanted to do his own thing, and Andrew Brister is his name. Awesome guy, and he saw what I was doing. I saw what he was doing. We found we found a really unique way to work together because he was scanning these old buildings around downtown Tulsa. Wow. And he was converting them into 3D models for the architecture firms, GH2, SGA, all these guys, KKT. And this, if you think about it timeline wise, like this is when Tulsa really started to turn over.
Totally.
Because for example, I met you at the Root, right? When during this time frame, that building was still abandoned with graffiti on it.
Wow.
So Andrew and I, it was cool because from 2015 to 2017, we had scanned almost all the old industrial buildings that either David Sharp owns or the Kaisers or whoever, and it was all for these architecture firms. And we had this beautiful process of I would fly the drone and we came up with this flight pattern. It was a grid. It was a grid pattern with the drone facing downwards, and you would create this map, and then you'd fly the side of the building up and down. So altitude would go up and down as you're kind of painting the side of the building. And we capture all that data. It pulls all the GPS data out of those files. And then Andrew would go around with a LiDAR and get the foundation of the base. And in 3 days, we could build a 3D model of an existing building within centimeter accuracy. And it would take an architecture firm 3 weeks to do that same process. And so this grew. And next thing you know, we had got our first government contract. It was like a 40-story building down in Dallas, federal building. And after that, Andrew got offered a buyout, an exit opportunity, took that. And so that's when AeroVision stopped the drone stuff because it all went with the buyout. And then AeroVision became a software development company.
But in that moment, were you like, oh God, I have to figure out what to do, how I pivot? Were you scared, or were you like, I've got this, no problem, I'll do some development work?
I was excited. I was excited. This was my opportunity to leave ConocoPhillips and convert, this side hustle into the main gig. It came at the best time. I was already teeter-tottering and ready to make that leave.
And so let's talk then, the transition into automation, data, analytics. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you're working on is super sensitive. So your clients don't want you talking about, all the data that you're collecting and analyzing and how you're delivering them results. Obviously, that's a huge competitive advantage in today's world. I mean, economists years ago had the data, is the new oil article, and everybody knows the amazing things, scary and or the most exciting things in the world that Facebook, Instagram, every other data collector in the world is doing with all their powerful analytics. How do you describe to people what you do now?
Yeah, if anybody off the street asks what I do, I tell them I'm a technical consultant or software consulting. But at the end of the day, to our clients, we're helping them automate business processes. We're helping them, enrich, financial information, operational data. Like when we worked with you guys, it was more around strategically understanding your personnel, looking at your performance of your employees. I mean, there's data in every component of a business that really relates, whether you're a bank or a property management business or, accounting firm, that, you've got people, you've got personnel, and you've got tools, right? So we live in that process improvement world. I think so. The thing that was a big pivotal moment for me was so SGA Design Group acquired the drone portion and the scanning portion of the business, and Andrew Brister took that opportunity, and he's still there and just crushing it.
Wow.
I knew I was going to leave ConocoPhillips. I didn't really have anything I had some website work that was going on the side. But when that transition happened, they immediately had a need for an application to host and serve
so all the foot in the door.
All the scanning data we were acquiring, so a big client of theirs is Walmart. They do at the time, it was 1,300 stores a year for Walmart.
Wow.
They needed a way to serve data to Walmart. And they didn't have a secure platform. Walmart didn't want to use Dropbox. Walmart didn't want to use Google Drive.
Sure.
So there's a lot of competitive reasons they didn't want to use AWS. And so I got the opportunity to basically build this platform that would help the company share all that data with Walmart and some of their other clients. So that was kind of a kickoff into custom software development.
At that time, was it SaaS or was it something else? Were you I remember the days when you had a floppy disk, you'd go to, whatever, CompuServe and buy a thing. And that long predates 2015 to be fair. That was the old day, right? Now they're SaaS. Were you originally doing SaaS stuff or you were building software directly on their servers, or how did it work?
The goal is we had to move them off their servers. They were hosting and all this data in an in-house server and trying to share it out. And it was slow and it was struggling. So we moved them to a cloud infrastructure. We built the cloud infrastructure and the platform and the UI on top of it so they could access it.
And all that went through AeroVision. And that was the start of the consulting in a SaaS space.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. So that was a great, entry into being an entrepreneur. Not that none of the other stuff wasn't. It was just, now I'm not leaning on ConocoPhillips for my financials, my life budget. I guess it's now this business needs to succeed, or I've got a runway of how long I can pull from my savings. Basically,
yeah, sure. That's scary. Honestly, that's the hardest part about leaving a corporate environment is, you got bills to pay. But honestly, that's the greatest motivator towards making it actually happen. Once your security blanket is taken away, you have to do it, or you go back to the environment where you're again, just working at ConocoPhillips. It wasn't fulfilling all of your needs on a spiritual level.
Absolutely.
So you and I were talking recently about your work with the banking sector. Tell us a little bit about what products you're working on, how you're helping banks, envision their data better.
Yeah, this is something I'm super excited about. So fast forward about a year and a half from that departure and working on this product for SGA Design Group. I had a mentor client at the time that was also another client while we were working this software build and I was doing some analytics work for them. This guy Stephen Taylor, he was formerly at Devon, so years in the oil and gas business. I was in oil and gas. We connected on that front. I was serving an oil and gas customer of his, and it was about fall of 2019 maybe. I see his LinkedIn status change. I hadn't talked to him in a while, and it went from his independent consulting firm to CIO, vast bank.
Oh,
and as a joke, I shot him a message jokingly, "Are you jumping ship on us?" Because
not in the oil and gas sector anymore.
Yeah, I was thinking he was oil and gas for life, and he just shot me a message back and he just said, "We need to talk." And so that kicked off a series of very unique projects in the world of banking. Starting with a vast bank, and at the time they were, still are innovating constantly.
Sure.
They're really pushing some new products and new industry focused initiatives, just that community banks have never done. For example, they're now a crypto custodian. They let their customers store crypto. They're the first community bank.
So they have a digital wallet, and they allow their users to not only envision see the entirety of their portfolio, crypto and cash and investments, whatever together, but they also you use their wallet to store your crypto.
Yeah. So and that's a strategic partnership they have with Coinbase. So they're they're partnered with Coinbase. They're partnering with some very big industry players, which is incredible for a Tulsa community bank to
absolutely. Absolutely.
So for us, after 6 to 12 months, we had picked up about five or six clients that were of similar size banks as Vast. And we started seeing this reoccurring trend each of these community banks, they were all on an old legacy core, right? And it's funny because it's the same thing in healthcare. Now I'm learning this is the same thing in staffing.
Right.
But it's these old core products that have served the industry since the 80s. And it's like probably COBOL is the coding language. And so they're never really going to get off this legacy core. It's probably always going to exist. But in a world where there's more dependence and reliance on these type of tools, it's very hard to integrate with the core. And so the recurring challenge I saw is these banks were just trying to understand their transactional data and analyze their customer behaviors based on how they're spending and earning. And so I started talking to a few of the banks, and I was like, how valuable is this to you? What kind of information are you trying to glean from your transactions? And each bank kind of had their own specific use case. But at the end of the day, I decided that it'd be a good time to maybe even start building a product that I could then scale and sell just to community banks. And so June of 2021, I started a new business called Identify.
Cool.
And Identify's mission, Identify's goal is ultimately to give power back to the community banks. And this is not new stuff. Goldman Sachs does this, Chase does this, but that accessibility you have when you're in your Chase bank account and they're sending you rewards, and they know your spending behavior. So you get rewards when you shop here or purchase here. And they're able to give you pre-approved loans and offers and just things that help you live your life, in your financial world. The community banks, they have that data. They have no way to access that data in a clean format. And they have no way to give that back to you. And that's the power that Identify wants to do, is where I'm using that data to identify those opportunities for the banks and then let them give those opportunities back to the customer.
And Identify is a totally separate business from AeroVision, but it presumably leverages AeroVision's the coder database and the network that you guys do for everybody else to develop that software.
So as an entrepreneur, so the folks that are listening that are entrepreneurs, the journey here was, I've got a company that builds software. I've got a strong team of data engineers. It makes sense. Let me just go start this separate company. Let me leverage AeroVision and all the talent and resources that we have to build this up. And then when the time comes, I'll flip the switch and all these banking clients will move to Identify. And that will be for me, a separate company.
I mean, David Charney, my friend who owns Capital Homes here in Tulsa and builds 220 homes a year, is always fond of saying, I have this machine. The machine is spitting out these homes. And for the vast majority of our existence as Capital Homes, we've provided high quality homes to primary residents, to people that want to buy them. But somebody at a conference once told me, you've got this machine. The most difficult part of building a rental portfolio is finding the assets. And if you already have the machine that's spitting out these homes, why not keep some of them in your rental portfolio? So I think the trajectory of many businesses, or the path of many businesses, is to build the initial engine that, creates revenue for you and an income for you and stability for you. And then over time, kind of gobble up more of the value chain as you see, I've got this amazing engine that can produce websites and code and analytics and can garner, insights from these analytics. Let's build a product. And then now I'm a client of my own business with a new business type of thing. Right. So that's an amazing, you've got the engine, just put it together in a way that you can develop a separate product, which is awesome.
Exactly.
So how many banks are using this now in our region? How many banks are there? I mean, there's so many community banks, and, I know there are other people that are also working on some insights for banking. Joey over at 19 Days, working with Jacob at GetWit, is working on a product that helps. Commercial
lenders.
Commercial lenders do what exactly?
They're trying to build a tool to help commercial lenders be more efficient and just understanding their portfolio.
Yeah.
There's a big disconnect in the commercial lending space that each bank uses a different CRM and a different tool. And you walk into one bank and they may just have a dry erase board, and that's all their data.
Wow.
Right. And you walk in another bank and they're in HubSpot. It's just very, very different.
Sure.
And I think there's so many opportunities out there. And that's why FinTech is such a big buzzword.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the West Coast, East Coast capital, that money is funding these consumer focused FinTechs. And I think the B2B FinTech space is still untapped. It's very untapped. And, I think what Joey's doing is amazing. I think that hopefully what I'm doing is going to help a lot of these community banks. They are fearful of the fintech. They're fearful of the neobanks. They're fearful of the Chimes and the Daves of the world.
Yeah.
Because that's the consumer market. That's big.
And so they're just scrambling to understand that side of the business more.
Yeah.
So you were telling me earlier about Jimmy Stallings, who's the president of repayments at Stride Bank, and you were describing Stride as a super innovative bank and the sponsor bank behind Chime, which is of course a unicorn fintech business. I mean, what has led Stride to be more innovative than other banks? I mean, why are they the sponsor bank behind Chime? How'd they get there? What can other banks learn from what they've done?
Yeah, they, if you look at all the fintechs out there in the neobank category, Chime is definitely one of the largest ones. And don't quote me on this, but so 2019 they were at like 2 to 3 million users. After this last year, I think they hit like 16 million.
Wow.
The growth is insane there. And what I'm seeing is they've found their niche. It's a younger demographic of people probably soon out of college or maybe out of high school that had just never opened a bank account. So they were like previously potentially unbanked. But back to the Stride deal, that's very rare of an Oklahoma bank to capture a partner like that. But it just goes to show that Oklahoma banks, like not just Stride, like Fast is another example, First Fidelity, some of these guys, they're very aware of what's going on in the industry, and there's no blanket by any means, just from being in Oklahoma or Arkansas. If anything, I think, we're kind of creating a hub here on the infrastructure side of things. Some of the other massive fintechs that exist today, some of the other major unicorns are all based out of Utah. It's odd. You would think California, but like Utah really is, in my opinion, one of the hubs.
Well, Goldman has their second largest office in Salt Lake City, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy to think, Visa's got a massive presence there too. And now all these infrastructure, these what's called an API level companies are growing out of Utah. But Stride couldn't have timed it better. They created a partnership with Chime. I want to say, don't quote me on this either, but 2018 going into 2019, Chime was looking for a bank they could grow with. The unique approach here is that Chime and Stride were perfectly aligned in their growth goals. Stride as a bank just wanted to get more deposits. So any type of relationship they bring on with a fintech, their goal is to either bring more cash in so they can then go loan against it. That's how banks make money. And Chime had the numbers to show that like, hey, we're going to increase your deposits by X amount. But who knew that we would go into a pandemic and that everything would almost be forced to go digital over the course of a year. And then Chime just skyrockets, right? Yeah. Everybody starts banking digitally, blows up Stride's, deposits beyond what they could even hold. And like, it was a great dynamic. And now there are bigger problems being solved because when you have that much data and that much transactional data, there's more that you can do with it. There's more you can understand about people's finances. And that's why ultimately we're excited to start working with Stride to just help them hone in on that data and that infrastructure. Like, how do you monetize it at that point for your bank?
Amazing to be involved with a bank that's seen such incredible growth. I mean, I don't know. Is there a top side? I mean, deposits, tier one capital is generally what stops you from being able to lend if your asset size grows too much. But I wonder if there's anything that stops you. I don't know the answer, but if there's anything that stops you from just taking on more and more deposits, is there any sort of regulatory environment that prohibits that? Regulatory, anything that prohibits that?
I'm not an expert, but I would assume so. I would assume there is eventually
can't grow too much.
Yeah.
That's annoying. So. Your growth has been great. Now just dial it back a little bit.
We're going to cap you at 10 billion. That's it. That's all you can do.
What are you following in the industry and your tech space? I mean, what are your favorite podcasts? What conferences are you going to? What are you seeing? What trends and where are you finding them?
That's a great question. I am pretty much fully focused on FinTech. So really anything that I share or dive into is FinTech. So conference wise, there is the FinTech DevCon, which is hosted by Moov, MOOV. This company is owned and operated by a mentor of mine. Picked up this mentor when I was developing Identify, just to validate Identify conceptually. He's also an avid mountain biker. He kicked my ass about a year ago. He was one of the guys that I went riding with, and I was just like, how? And he's probably 10 years older than me. So anyway, for multiple reasons, I look up to this guy. And his company hit 1 years of age last June, and then he hosted his very first conference last August.
Wow.
And it was an incredible turnout.
So Move is his company.
Move is his company. Yeah. Cool. So this is a guy that has been in the industry for a long time. It was, FinTech before it was FinTech, but he built a company called Banno. It was the very first mobile banking application. He sold it to Jack Henry. So he sold it to the largest core provider in 2014, served on the board of a couple FinTechs. And then I think he got bored, quite honestly, and it self-invested, started Move, and then got some attention from Andreessen Horowitz. Ben Horowitz now sits on his board. Wow. He's really well tapped in. He's based out of Golden, Colorado. Cool. It's a fully remote company, though. There's 2 developers here in Tulsa that actually work for him full time.
Beautiful.
Just very proactive. His goal, I don't know at first if he was even aiming to make money, but he was trying to open source the banking core. He had a GitHub you could go fork, and you could pull down an ACH function or a payments function and go build your own product on his code, which I think, nobody has ever given back to the industry quite like that. I'll just say his conference was incredible because he did not allow salespeople. You had to either be a developer or a technical founder of one of these companies to attend the conference. It was capped at 300 people. And I met co-founders of Chime. I met co-founders of MX. People from Plaid were there. It was some of the highest caliber.
Plaid is an integration software that takes banking details and then I guess somehow makes it so it's secure and you can share it with other people to say, yeah, my income level is this.
If you've logged into Coinbase or if you've logged into Robinhood or whatever, you've used Plaid.
Yeah.
It's in there. Mint, awesome. Any of those tools. Plaid's a unicorn, $16 billion valuation now, maybe more. Visa tried to buy him and U.S. Department of Justice stepped in. It's crazy.
Wow.
So his conference and really any material that his company puts out, that's at the top of my, if I'm a sponge, that's the first drop that I'm getting for any information. Next to that, anything that A16Z puts out. So Andreessen Horowitz, I follow all their newsletters and really all their podcasts pretty religiously. And at that point, I feel like that's all I can consume. There's only so much your brain can hold. And I try to just keep it with that. And I do feel like there's a lot just from that. Those 2 sources.
Any books by your nightstand that you're reading?
Yes. So same recommendation to you as I gave my forum, which I think half my forum is read now.
Wow.
Is Simple Numbers, Big Profits.
Simple Numbers, Big.
Greg Crabtree, and it's an easy read. So here's where I got it, Matt. So we had an EO event at the Jinx Aquarium last fall. It was the Shark Tank one. And there was the guy that came up from Dallas and he was on Shark Tank and he pitched Shark Tank and did a deal on Shark Tank. And I really liked him. His name is Mitch Allen. He's had a couple successful exits and he now runs a company called Hire Santa. It's the largest Santa staffing agency. And he had 2.
It's amazing that the niche element of that is amazing. And it just proves you can make money in any micro industry. That's amazing.
He is the sole contract for every Bass Pro Shop, and all the Santas that are standing at Bass Pro Shop are in some of the major malls of the U.S. are hired through his company. It's so wild. Anyway, Mitch is incredible. I could tell he's a very analytical guy. He's an MIT grad, and he had 2 books that he mentioned. One was this Simple Numbers, Big Profits. The reason being is because Greg Crabtree is an EO member, and it's just a great book to understand if you're in that $1 to $5 million revenue range and understanding how to pay yourself, how to pay your people. The actual revenue per head count is a very important calculation. The other book that Mitch recommended that I'd already actually read twice last year was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Yeah.
So those are my main 2.
That's great. He's an former FBI hostage negotiator, and he talks about all sorts of negotiation techniques. That's an awesome book for sure.
Incredible book. Incredible. So Yeah, I will probably read both of those every year.
What's his main thing? His main thing is you always ask, how am I supposed to do that? So like somebody says like, I want $100, and you're like, I how can I do that? I can't do that, right?
Yeah, it's like I've got your son. It's like, well, how do I know they're alive? Yeah. How am I supposed to get to them? Yeah, he's so good. So
he's cool. I love it. All right, we've been talking to Lee, founder of AeroVision. Lee, where can people learn more about you?
So you can check out our website at aerovision.io, and the arrow is just like aerospace, so AERO vision.io. And then for the SaaS product, Identify, so it's just identify.tech. That's our new banking SaaS product.
I love it. Lee, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.